Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time zone it is, wherever you in the world, it is your Lore Saviour on an early Tuesday morning, sporting some very fine homemade crochet drip. Just wowzers, look at that, we've got the whole fucking bisexual colouring scheme going on there, because I, your Lore Saviour, am bisexual. But we're not here talking about me in that way, we're talking about me in that it'll be 5 years of Lore by Night next week. You know, my actual anniversary episode's coming up, and I need your help for that, in that I want you to ask me some questions and I'll answer them. Because you may remember, if you've been around since the beginning, whenever I got an accumulation of 500 new subscribers, I do a Q&A. But I stopped doing them because I kept gaining them so fast and people were asking so much niche questions that it just didn't become fun to do anymore, and I just didn't touch it. I think the last time I did one was in 2021, so quite a long time ago, to be honest. So ask me any questions and I will answer the most interesting. So yeah, start commenting in the description below. But by the title of the thumbnail, we're actually going to be talking about vampire a bit more, because I thought it would be interesting to talk a little bit about my first ever game of Vampire the Masquerade, because not only is it my 5 years of doing Lore by Night, it is also 5 years of me enjoying TTRPGs. So, and I've alluded to this first game a couple times before, but I've never really actually spoken about it in full detail, and I thought it would be fun to wander down memory lane and explore that dank experience. So late 2019 I purchased my copy of V5. You know, I started with V5 through Vampire, then Bloodlines, then LA by Night, then V5, and then I went on to a handful of Vampire the Masquerade focused Facebook groups to see if anybody was interested in playing a game of Vampire or advertising it, because at the time my logic was, oh, this is the newest version of Vampire, this is what most people are going to be playing. Right? Wrong. Especially on the fucking Facebook groups, when most of the people were still playing V20. But to be honest, unlike a lot of people with newer systems, I was prepared to go back to an older one if it meant I could play some Vampire. And I believe it was about September-ish, because I got V5 in June, July. I want to say it's the 3rd of June or the 3rd of July. And it was about September-ish where I saw that there was somebody based in France wanting to run a short V20 Chronicle. And I hadn't really heard much of V20 before, but this was Europe-based and I didn't have to do too much juggling with the time zones, because if you're unaware, I'm British, in it, I live in England, and juggling with those American time zones can be a right fucking pain in the arse. And it just made things very difficult, often for me, because I'd be gaming late at night or the early hours of the morning, and I didn't want that. So if it was a bit, you know, more reasonable, then I would do it. That was my only real stipulation for the whole thing. So there was this French geezer, and he had a couple of other Europeans that were going to play as well, and it involved us starting in France, and we were going to go to Egypt to find something. The Chronicle never actually finished. It was only a one-shot, unfortunately. But we were encouraged to make kind of like stealthy investigative characters, which is fine, because I wanted to be a Nosferatu. I'd already decided at this point that the Nosferatu were my favourite clan, and I didn't want to be somebody who knew everything. I actually purposely wanted to play somebody who was recently embraced, who didn't know everything but wanted to learn more, like he had found some sort of purpose in unlife, you know? And he was also going to be well-spoken and sophisticated. He's going to wear nice clothes, but he's still a sneaky little bastard. That's how Malcolm Ashburn, Orlok, came into being, because I was not allowed to be a Nosferatu because the games master, or storyteller, thought I wouldn't enjoy it and didn't want clans and characters breaking the Masquerade, and I definitely would as a Nosferatu. But I wanted to be a sneaky person, and I wanted to go through those potential risks of, you know, I'm a walking Masquerade violation sort of thing. But no, he decided I wasn't going to do that, so I ended up taking that character, making him a knowledgeable know-it-all for Lore by Night not too long after that. So the Lord works in mysterious ways. So I was going through the V20 core book, getting really absorbed with all the different clans and bloodlines and whatnot, and I thought, okay, well, maybe I can give a shot at an Assamite. But he put his foot down on that one as well. So no, that's very difficult to do with all this history and its lore and whatnot. Somebody had already taken Tremere, so I then ended up being a Ventrue, Vincent Goldsmith, Generation 13, who didn't control boardrooms and such. He was a gang boss, and he like smuggled drugs and, you know, all that fun stuff, because at that point I found the Ventrue pretty one note, and I gave himself that bit of a twist just to make it a bit more engaging for me. And that was approved, and the concept surprised people. Now, admittedly, I don't really remember the game as a whole. There were 3 of us, and we had to try and find and locate something so we can board a ferry and then make our way to Egypt. I think it was Cairo specifically, so who knows. And one group had to go and like do a bit of a gambling with some kindred, and I was with somebody else who was made to interrogate a police officer who was an elder, which I remember thinking at the time was very unusual. Like, it felt like to me that the games master, the storyteller, was deliberately putting things in place so we couldn't like overpower things and just, you know, explore the full possibility of our powers and whatnot, because it just felt a bit railroady, and I felt that I couldn't do things that I wanted to do. But then came the bit where I've mentioned the most about this story, in that in the middle of the streets of Paris there were Sombra and werewolves just out in the open fighting. You know how he didn't want anybody breaking the Masquerade? How he wanted people to try and be careful and sneaky? And then he throws fucking La Sombra and werewolves for us to go and deal with, because we had to rescue someone. I don't really know or remember why. And I think I annoyed the storyteller with this, because I was intercepted by a guru, and he forgot that werewolves are susceptible to dominate. So I was able to dominate the werewolf and make the bitch my bitch for a little bit. We were able to successfully rescue the person that we were going to rescue. We were also down a player at that point, not because anybody died, because somebody didn't make a combat character who could. They were Toreador, and they couldn't deal with the werewolves. And they just sort of noped their way out whilst the rest of us go and risked our bacon for it. And they'd already displayed that they had presence, so they could, at the very least, they made them a bit more tolerable, you know, towards them. But no, they just noped their way out there. There was also a Tremere player who made all their rolls in secret, which also really annoyed me because we weren't privy to what was going on. Now, at the time, I really enjoyed this game, but looking back and finding things online to read and watch, you know, to improve my games mastering, and playing games with people and how I naturally run things, I think they were pretty shit storyteller, to be honest. They really didn't have any real good reason to prevent people from not being what they wanted to be, or at the very least me. Like, especially in the fact that they didn't want anyone breaking the Masquerade, and then they had this big old fucking Masquerade violation thing in the middle of Paris. It was really annoying, and I didn't really enjoy that character very much, because I've since played better games and I've experienced much better. I know what a good game of Vampire is. But you know, as a first game and as a bad game goes, that's not the end of the world really. It's not awful. It was just a bit disappointing. And then, as I said earlier on, this game only ever ended up being a one-shot because it was never carried on, which is a bit frustrating, you know. Because, you know, it'd be nice to have played in a Chronicle, but at the same time, I don't really have much regrets over it. It was an eye-opening experience, and as I said earlier on, it helped me develop our Nosferatu narrator who took us through most of the Lore by Night, you know, videos and whatnot, and also how to be a good games master, you know, so turn some bad experiences, or some not particularly great ones, into what I hope and feel are a load of other great games and experiences. Because I don't think I've ever ran a game where people haven't enjoyed themselves. Like, there's been a couple of games that I've run where I felt like I could have done a bit better, or I could have done this, I could have done that, but that's probably just me being very much of a perfectionist in that sense. But, you know, as I said, I try and take the things that I don't do as well, and I make them even better, and I don't think there's been any player that has had a bad time being in a game with me, and I hope that I've been open and supportive enough, so if there was a problem, people could turn around and say, hey, Lore, I'm not too fond of this, or, you know, this is okay, but could we not do that, or whatever, you know, because accidents happen, you know, nobody's perfect, and I always do my best to accommodate people how the best that I can, because I just want to make sure people are happy. And there you have it, the singular adventure of Ventrue Vincent Goldsmith. I didn't use him for any other game that I played in, because that's not really what I do. I don't like reusing characters, like plonking them in other places in the world. I try and make characters that fit the game's master's vision, you know, so it just flows a bit better and have that bit of a restriction, as it were. It's fun to work with, you know, so I don't make anything that's too outlandish, and I don't go for main character syndrome, which, you know, and take up much of the spotlight just because I stand out. So yeah, Vincent Goldsmith now lives in a folder because it's like a special memento sort of thing. And yeah, that's basically it really. I don't really have anything else to add to that. To that end, whilst you're leaving your questions for me to answer next week in my 5-year anniversary Q&A and general reflection and whatnot, tell me about your first World of Darkness games that you played as a player and ones that you ran as a storyteller, because I'd be really interested to see what they're like for all of you, and also how you've all developed since then. It'll be really cool to explore. And whilst you're down there leaving past stories and answering questions for me to answer next week, you can check out a handhold of Vampire the Masquerade books for you to enjoy in your games in case you haven't had the opportunity yet, and / all you want to do that more. And if you purchase some of those links, I get some of the money back because I'm an affiliate on Drive-Thru RPG and the Storyteller's Vault, and the little bit of coinage I get back from that helps me to supply more dank lore and all the fun things that you love me doing, which is pretty awesome. But if you can't, that's absolutely fine. I know times are hard and all of that, but I'd really appreciate it all the same. But regardless, like, share and subscribe if you like what I do and you want more people to see what I do, and I'll see you on the next upload, whatever that may well be for you. And until next time.